Almost every single area of our life is somehow connected to money. So, of course, we talk a lot about spending for sure, but we also need to talk about earning and income and career. Those things matter a lot too. Credit Canada offers a financial coaching program called Credit Canada Gold, and I am bringing in a gold facilitator to join us for this next conversation. Kelly Cowan has been working as a trainer and an executive coach for decades in organizations large and small. So, Kelly, hello, and thank you for being here. In a sentence or two, what should people know about gold?
Hello, Bruce. Great to be here. Credit Canada Gold is a holistic financial coaching program. It's financial education and insight, community support, ideas, accountability. We help people to take action and slay the debt dragon and get back into life.
Yes, we do. We do all those things. This guest is your idea. It's a book you picked up that you loved. Our guest is Bondi. She wrote a book called Ask Like an Auctioneer, How to Ask for More and Get It. Before she comes in here, why did you think this conversation would be helpful for people getting out of debt?
People struggle to both reduce expenses and raise income to create the cash you need to pay the debt down. They need confidence. They need to know how to ask for a raise. And Dia has insight into these challenges and provides some creative and practical solutions.
And she very generously decided she was willing to join us from the San Francisco Bay Area. Bondi, hello there and welcome.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. And I love addressing the issues of helping people get where they want to go using asking to get there.
Love it. Kelly's going to kick it off.
All right, here we go. As you heard, Credit Canada runs a financial coaching program. And when I read your example of Amber, the lawyer facing a salary negotiation that made her skin feel hot, I immediately connected your work to our clients and how they feel and the challenges they have. So just to get started, it's really about this auctioneer concept. Like, how did that come to be? You worked as an auctioneer.
So I've been a longtime leadership communications coach, 20 years working with VC-backed founders, senior leaders to help them speak powerfully at really critical moments. And I took a break, as you do mid-career. I took a break. And during that time, I went to auctioneering school just for fun as a bucket list item. I had been invited to be the fundraising auctioneer for my children's preschool a decade before. And I thought, I want to learn something new and weird and different. And maybe that would be just a little adventure for me because adventure is one of my big values. And when I got back to the Bay Area, I decided to turn that little adventure into an impact hobby and started doing fundraising, auctioneering for women-led nonprofits and nonprofits benefiting women and girls, and really just as an impact hobby. And 20 or 30 auctions into it, I realized that what I was learning in the front of the room was really valuable to how the clients and founders and high impact professionals and just everyday conversations I have with other folks about how they can ask for more and get it so they can reach their goals faster.
Do you talk really fast? Can you talk really fast? How fast can you talk? Can you talk really fast?
It's funny. So when I say ask like an auctioneer, I don't actually mean be an auctioneer or learn the skills of auctioneering. What I mean is the mental model and framework. And the trick is because I don't do auctions at cattle events or large tractor auctions, I can't actually talk that fast because the bidders are kind of amateurish too. So
right. So give us the overview of how this idea or this metaphor connects to the broader world of negotiation in people's lives.
Well, first you need to know what I mean by ask like an auctioneer. Can I start there?
Please.
Okay, so what I mean by ask like an auctioneer is this. So for years, my clients in my communications work would come to me because they needed to put together a compelling story and then tell it in a compelling way to secure and at the end of each of those stories, we knew there was always a CTA or a call to action. It's a acronym folks are very familiar with. And when I asked them what they were asking for of their audience, whether it was somebody in a boardroom across the table or in front of a large audience, it was easy to figure out the what. It was headcount, it's budget, it's a raise, it's a promotion, it's opportunity to raise your profile in your organization. But the trick was the next question, which is, well, how much of that thing are you asking for? And I was often met with the question, well, what do you think I can get? And for years, I was like, yes, let's go ask for what we think we can get. And then we'd get that and we thought we were awesome. But that's not what we do as auctioneers. Okay. So asking like an auctioneer means actually that I ask in order to get a no and then negotiate down 1 or 2 clicks until you find the perfect equilibrium between the largest possible ask and what your audience will say yes to. Because as an auctioneer, I can't actually sell an item until I get a yes, until I get a no. Because a no lets me know I've maximized the potential. There's nobody in the room that's going to say yes to more. And that no, when I ask, I'm looking for a $5,000 bid. Anybody in the room for 5? I might get a paddle at 5. And I say, fine, 5,500. Who's in at 5,500? And the person that was maybe in at 45, somebody else took it at 55. I might go back to that person and say, are you in at 55? And they'll say no. And that's great news for me because it lets me know I've maximized the potential of the ask. So essentially, asking like an auctioneer means asking in order to get a no, trusting that you can have a conversation after you get the no about what's going to work for both of you, and you end up with more than if you had designed an ask directly to get a yes.
Fantastic. I'm wondering how you notice that these ideas resonate differently for women and men.
I mean, everyone's Zofo is different, and what shows up in the Zofo is different. Now, Kelly, you've read the book, so you know the concept of the Zofo, which is what I call the zone of freaking out. Okay, so why don't we ask so big and challenge our assumptions about what somebody will say yes or no to? Why don't we actively ask in order to get a no, which we have to do, by the way, because most of us are not in competitive bidding situations. You're not asking for more and more and more and more of other people. You're just making you're taking a guess like, okay, I know I want to ask for a 10% raise. I think they'll say no to 15. I'm going to ask for 15 and see if I can land on 12. Okay, fine. That's just a little example of how it goes. But we don't ask for that 15, and we don't make the asks that threaten a no, because everything that lives between a mostly guaranteed yes and the word no, all those asks, all those increments, all those amounts live in a place I like to call the zone of freaking out, because it's the ask that's so big it makes us freak out. So when I notice in the hundreds and hundreds of conversations I've had with folks, whether they're startup entrepreneurs or knowledge workers or just every profile, what the Zofo tells us is a little different. Women are very concerned about whether the asking for a lot is going to make them look greedy, selfish, et cetera, et cetera. Like it's very much about managing their perception. And fair enough, because sometimes centering your own need is against, and what you want is against gendered expectations, where we're expected to accommodate others.
I can see this being immediately applicable in a sales context, in a context in which you're asking for a raise. Pepper us with other examples of where you think this model can be applicable in a whole bunch of different areas.
Okay. So maybe you've got a goal. You've got a financial goal. I want to, increase my salary. I want to increase my income, not even salary, because I have multiple streams of income in my world. And some folks might have a salary plus other stuff, right? I want to increase my income by 30% next year. Then the question becomes, what do I need to make happen in order to do that? And then what asks might I make that help that happen so I can get closer to the goal? So I've found that the things that people need to make happen fall into 4 categories. Are you ready?
Ready.
Absolutely. More money. Like I could make asks around more money in order to achieve my money goal. But maybe I need to ask for a little bit more, ask for things that help grow my influence in a market. Okay, if I have more influence at work, for example, for the very first time, asked to speak at an all hands at my company. And so more people across my organization are familiar with my face, and I can expand my mentorship, which might translate into sponsorship. The next time I go ask for a raise, I can find mentors that will stand up for me when I'm not in the room. Do you see what I'm doing there?
Mm-hmm.
So more influence. We make asks that are about decision-making power. That might be in the form of an actual authority. That could be in the form of decision-making power that you thought you had, but you ended up not having in your business or in your work. It was just job description, but somebody didn't let it actually give it to you, like let go of it. And you need that decision-making power in order to demonstrate the impact you have in the organization, which can then set you up for a financial ask later. Do you see what I'm doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Decision-making power that could also come in the form of a promotion. Okay, certain roles own certain decision-making power. And then the fourth one is around balance, bringing into balance maybe what we're doing in our work life and who we actually are. I mean, you could think of that more about alignment, right? And I have found often that when we're maybe stuck financially, if we can think about how do I think about what my next career move might be, where do I want to go next, that opens a whole new set of potential for me for earning, right? So the asks we can make that move us more into balance that way. Of course, I mean, there were asks about compensation package. There's asks around exposure and access to mentors in and outside of your organization and in your field. It's about asking for it could be about asking for the opportunity to buy a small apartment building in your community that you think is way out of reach, but you're going to go ahead and make a Zofo ask and put the offer in anyway, even though you're sure they're going to say no, which by the way is exactly what happened to my husband and I 18 years ago in the home that we had.
Yeah. What a random question. I love it.
So it can be about those four categories. And I think about money asks being like the money ask is now, or what might you ask for now that sets you up for a bigger money ask later? Is that helpful, Bruce?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, following up on that around the decision-making piece. What examples when our clients are in relationships, they have partners, they have to negotiate with each other. Curious if you've had any examples that have helped in that domain.
Yeah, I mean, here's a really simple one that comes to my mind. It's not a partnered situation, but I gave a book salon a couple of months back, and a woman afterwards said, "Oh man, I'm in my dream job. I'm a COO at a tech startup, and I own all of these things, like the decision. I'm supposed to own the decision-making power on all these things." She listed a handful. And she said, but my founder, although he wants to give me decision-making power, he hasn't really let go yet. This goes back to the example I gave earlier. So her ask was going to be around sitting down with the founder and saying, look, there are 3 areas where I need explicit decision-making ownership if I'm actually going to be successful here. And so that's just an example of how you can make the implicit, who's on first, explicit by being clear about asking for that decision-making power. Yeah.
In the context of the auction, there is implied value in the thing, whether it's the cattle or the wine gift basket.
Oh, Bruce is going to get me started.
There's a lot of value in there. So tell me, how do you ensure that there's enough value? Because if you're not worth the money, or your idea is stupid, or whatever, how great you are at asking for the thing will be insufficient because the thing that you're asking about isn't valued by the person on the other end of the line.
Ooh, okay. Number one, if we're going to draw on the world of Ask Like an Auctioneer, hold on to your hats. This is the thing. This is the thing. Price, because we are not cattle. Nor are we socks. We're not a commodity.
Not even wine.
No, we're not. It's easy to think, what's the absolute value of what's my worth in the market? Of course, there is a ballpark, when you're thinking about particular roles at a particular level and a particular, level of responsibility, et cetera. But there's also your ballpark, which is your employer, your customers right now in the context of this moment in your unique situation. So I just want to separate that, because it's easy for us to try to Google our worth, and it's a garbage exercise. Right. It's more anxiety provoking than anything else. You have to think about your ballpark. Yeah. Okay. Number one. Number two, what I learned from the world of auctioneering, this is my favorite chapter in the book. Kelly, you can bookmark it for all of the folks that are in your cohort. Next cohort is if they just cut straight to this one, it can be very freeing, which is price, or what somebody will say, yes, will pay or do for you, is a measure of what they value and how they value it, not a way for you to define your own worth or worthiness. I want to uncouple the idea of worth and value completely. People smash them together. You love the question, Bruce, but you smashed it together. You talked about value and worth almost like synonymously. And I'm slicing and dicing the words because worth and worthiness is inherent to our humanity and who we are. Your worth is infinite. The value you might provide in a particular market at a particular moment is a combination of, yes, what you bring to the table, but also how others value it, period.
Yeah.
So
I think that's great. And I think that you're addressing the two levels at which this lives. There is the part that's in the individual and the human and the self-worth. And then there's the value of the wine. The auctioneer is going to have a different expectation for homemade schlock in a bottle versus Napa's greatest.
Not my job, Bruce. Not my job.
Yeah.
Not my job to value it. You know what the value is driven by? What somebody in the room will pay for it. I can't tell you how many times me and my clients game out what one piece of art is worth or not worth. Oh, well, it's supposed to be worth 10 grand. Well, I don't know. It'll probably go for 12 grand because we invited these people, but maybe it'll go. We know that if it was of something similar like this from the same artist sold at auction, we game out and it never goes as expected, Bruce. Right. So it's not my job to decide what somebody will or won't pay for it. My job is to decide what's the minimum that we're going to take for this, and then to ask and find out what somebody else will pay for it, because price is a measure of what they value, not our worth, not what something's absolute worth and worthiness of. It's highly contextual.
I found that incredibly helpful, to be honest. And the breakdown of that frees you up to make an ask, and it can be playful. You can go to the bank and ask them, hey, can I get a reduction on my credit line in interest rate, without all of this thing like, is it okay to ask? Like, just take that whole. Auctioneering item after item after item, after being told what it was supposed to be, quote unquote, worth, and having it never go that way, made me let go of deciding what it's worth, and instead going like, we're going to start here. We know we won't sell it less for that. And I'm going to ask and see and find out. Now, here's the thing. This is important because as folks listening right now, if you're on the edge of your seats going to ask that investor for that angel funding, or you're going to ask your boss for a raise, or you're in the middle of the question of like, tell us what your salary requirements are. If we, quote unquote, ask for what we're worth, and yes, I want you to get paid what you're worth. Like, I want you to get paid what you're worth. But the problem is when we set it up that way, we will kind of shrink our asks a little bit because it's too terrible. The thought is too terrible that I make an ask, and if I get a no, well, maybe I'm just not worth that. It's just that those people at that time, in their context, right now, in that market, don't value it the same way. Now, that could be a couple of things. One is, you just don't have enough skill, fine. Or the thing they're looking for is not you, is not what you're bringing to the table. It could be that you didn't tell a compelling story. So we can go back and go, next time, how might I make that story a little bit, set myself up differently? But we have to uncouple the asks we make and the answers we get with our own sense of worth and worthiness, and just go, because here's the thing also, ladies and gentlemen, as you're listening, you'll never catch me dead carrying a Prada bag. Really? Not because it's not worth it. It's not worth, I don't know how much a Prada bag is, handbag. It's not worth it to me. So I wouldn't pay $20 for it. Is that a comment on what it's worth? No, it just doesn't have value to me.
Right. That's great.
You mentioned this part about going in with the limit, and in the book, you call it a reserve. And you had an example of Gabby, who was a young artist, and she managed to she didn't accept a lowball offer from a client for her art and kept her confidence. So I'm just seeing your hand on your heart there as a meaningful story to you. I just wonder if you could explore that idea for people. What is a reserve?
Yeah. So your reserve, and look, you're going to go into asks and you're going to say, look, Dia, I do it all the time. I send proposals off to clients and I'm like, look, Dia, their answer is just a signal to what they value and how they value it, not a statement about your worth or worthiness. Like that helps me push send for the big number. It helps me, like be curious instead of be held hostage. And in that process, it can also be really helpful to make a big ask that threatens a no when you've already decided yourself what the minimum of the counter offer, with the minimum you'll accept in a counter offer. This in auctioneering is what we call a reserve. Now, it's, we have this when you post something on eBay, you decide what the minimum is, and we can do that for ourselves as well. And the beauty of deciding, I'm not going to accept less than, let's imagine you make a salary request for 77,000, and that's feels like a very Zofo number for you, but you've decided for yourself right now that I can't say yes. I'm not going to say yes if they come back for under 62. I've got 55 now. It's time for me to make a level up. Okay. So when we make of course you can change your mind, but we want to do the thinking now so that we're not put into pressure with the carrot dangling in front of us for that too low offer, but it's something, So the reserve is really powerful because we can decide now. And then you can do the most important thing, which is to game out for yourself. What if they can't even meet my reserve? What is my plan? People ask me all the time, okay, Dia, this is all great, but like, what do I do if I get a hard no? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to do?
Wait a second. You're supposed to have an answer to that. That was my supplementary question. So, okay, there's no magic answer, but tell us how one would think through the game plan for a no. What would be some questions you would want us to consider so that we feel like we've got something that we'd be
right
should there be a no?
Great. So first, I'm always going to ask, okay, if they don't meet your reserve, what do you want to do? Which is different than what are you going to do?
Oh.
Because it could be like, well, I want to light the building on fire. Well, you're not going to actually do that, but recognizing how mad that would make you or how insulted that would make you feel, or how like, oh, frustrated you might be. Like that's a useful exercise to go like, what do I really want to do?
I would stop at letting the air out of their tires. I think that
perfect.
would be
good.
On
okay.
brand for me.
So we're safe with you.
Yeah.
We're safe with you. But what do you want to do? And it doesn't take much more of that to go, okay, what do you want to do? And then to go, all right, is that true? Is that something you're willing to do? I had a woman, she was a house manager, and a house manager means you're kind of running the household of a very extra super high net worth household. And a household could be multiple homes across geographies. You're helping them with setting up their family system. You're helping them with construction projects. You're running their estates essentially. And this woman was like, I need to make so much more money with this family because it's so much work. And it was a very, very big ask. And, she was kind of like, I'm going to ask for this. And it was a lot. And it wasn't just one thing. It was more money. It was an apartment in a certain location. It was flexibility around travel. Like it was a big, juicy, multi-dimensional ask. It involved some decision-making power, et cetera. And when we came up with the number and all those pieces, we had to ask, what if you get a no even to your reserve? And she was like, I was like, okay, what do you want to do if they don't meet your reserve? And she connected with her little heart and she was like, oh my God, it's going to be time for me to go. And that is great, great news. When we're clear about it. I had another woman. Let me give you another example. I was at a large tech company doing this workshop. I had a woman who was a product manager. She had been a product manager for a long time. And she was like, I want to be a people manager. I love managing people. I love seeing them grow. And she knew that was sort of the next fork in her career path. And she'd been asking for this for a really long time and had been told, yes, but not yet. She was getting what I like to call breadcrumbed. And when we designed her ask, it was in that same field of things she's already been asking. But what she never did was ask herself, what if they'd essentially been saying yes out of one side of their mouths and no out of the other because it was a not yet scenario. And I'm like, your reserve is not whether or not you're going to be a people manager. Your reserve is timing. When do you want to make this happen? And she was like, 2 quarters. And I was like, okay, great. So you're going to give them the final warning this quarter. And then next quarter, if it's still not happened, that's your reserve. Your minimum, like it has to happen by a certain time or what? And same thing. She was like, oh, I think it'll be time for me to go. Wow. And she had an awakeness in her eye as she talked about it because she was being honest with herself. Yeah, it was like she pulled a fish hook out of her mouth. She'd been stuck on the line for so long. So what do you want? And then go, is that true? And is that really what you're going to do? To go, okay, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to do this. I'm not going to leave. I really want to leave, but maybe not altogether. I want to move out of product and into I don't know, into operations. Okay, now that's good. You got yourself a plan. Yeah.
So one of the other concepts that relates to how we think about a traditional auctioneer's world of wine and cattle is this idea of an increment, like how the bids move over the course of that conversation. Let's connect that into this conversation. What is it? What's an example of an increment? How do you use it?
Beautiful, beautiful question, because I think folks sometimes think only about increments being dollars and cents. I had a woman and I talk about her in the book, she's a woman in my network for a long time. We had a conversation about asking like an auctioneer. She had taken over a big marketing role, and the increment that she was playing with was not just more money. And if they couldn't meet the more money minimum, she was like, fine, I don't need more money, but I want it in a different currency because that would make her advantaged. And isn't that wonderful?
Like in yen or something?
No, she was actually Canadian working for an American company.
Oh, fantastic. Great. That's a 37% increase right there.
Right there. So do you see how increments aren't just, I want more money? It could be, I want more time off. I want more flexible work environment. I want more opportunities to, okay, fine, you can't give me more money, but I want more opportunities to sit in on that critical quarterly meeting with the rest of the executive team because that's tied to my career goals for myself. Now I can go, all right, I can live without the bigger money, but I'm setting myself up for actioning my career goals that are going to bring me more money down the road. Do you hear that? I sometimes with my founder clients take both money and shares.
Ooh, I like that. Money and shares.
So increments can be whatever you want. It can be lots of different things. It could be where you work from. It could be, so I want to invite folks to think about all the things you can ask for beyond the obvious.
Yeah, really good.
Thanks, Bruce. Great question.
Building on that, when's the right time? How do you determine the best time? For an auctioneer, you've got everybody in the room and everyone's on the same page in terms of what's happening. Less so sometimes when it comes to asking for a raise or you don't want to do it at the holiday party.
So I love that you're pointing to that because it is true that in an auctioneering scenario, and I'm just doing fundraising auctioneering, right? But we do have a curated audience of folks who understand what we're doing, whether we're doing an art auction to support arts education in the public schools across, low-income communities, whether we're doing, auctioneering live trips to support single moms that live at the poverty level that are going through breast cancer treatment. Like the people in the room are people who are on board, So there's two things here now that I'm saying it out loud. One is it's important. The when could be determined by, have I curated the right group of people to help me get where I'm going? Okay. And have I identified the right profile of person to make the ask to that helps me, that emboldens my ask, So do you have that bank of folks? And if not yet, how might you curate them till you notice like, oh, I have a really good community of mentors, of peers, of people who can recommend me to other people that I could make asks to? Like, how are you curating your audience? And if you don't have that and you have to make the ask now, if your folks in your programs are like, this is the year I'm going to find that new role that grows my salary by 30%. This is the year. You're going to be making asks of people that are pretty cold. Like you're going to make cold asks. You're going to want, it's funny, I did a walk and talk video about this on my way to the office this morning, which is this framework to say, the when could be totally arbitrary. And if it is, and it's kind of a cold open, we want to use this framework. I see you, you see me. And because of that, here's my ask. I see you. You don't know me, but I see you having a huge influence in the startup community for women founders who are pre-seed and seed rounds. And I can see what a big champion you are for advancing women in entrepreneurship. I wrote a book around helping women ask for more and get it. And, early stage startups are a big focus of mine. And because you're trying to have the similar impact that I'm having, here's my ask. Can I come speak to your group? Do you see what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
What perspective would you offer or advice would you give for people who, I'm using air quotes here, who are unqualified for the thing? And, sometimes that's in their judgment and sometimes it's tangible. It's on a piece of paper. They don't have the thing. Do they, in full transparency, acknowledge that? Or do they just march in, show all their true colors and apply all these tools? What would be some things that you would think about to determine whether you address what could be an elephant in the room?
Yeah. Well, look, people can see that. So you need, even if you don't say it out loud, you need to know it. Like, you need to be honest with yourself about where you sit and what you coming to the table does for the people across the table, period. Like, this is not about hubris. And you need, a good friend of mine said, you need to be ready to know what to do when you come to a knife fight and win. Which is to say, you're going to make a big ask. If you get told no and you don't have the tools to execute on the promise that you laid on the line that is implicit in your ask, you are going to, over time, be in trouble. So that's one. Like, it doesn't help you, I don't think, to make asks that are beyond the value that you're actually bringing to the table. Okay. Right. And recognizing that is important. Two, you can recognize it if you like. I remember the very first big ask I made. Like the ask that changed everything for me. I remember directly saying to the person on the other line, "I'm looking for my big break." Because yes, and it's going to be you or it's going to be somebody else. But here's the thing, your ask must be honest. I recognize that my ask wasn't, I'm asking for a job because I'm amazing and I can do that. I said, I think I'm going to be good at this, but my real ask is for being an apprentice. Like, will you teach me? So we've got to make sure our asks are real and true to the thing we're really asking for, and that we can be prepared to actually win when we come to that knife fight.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very creative solution for people to think about. That is like, well, who could mentor me? If I'm not ready for that job, how else can I map out that pathway? It might take a couple steps. It might take a couple of years. That's much more empowering than going,
And by the way, looking for mentors or access to communities that can teach and expose you to the things you need in ways that you need to grow in order to be ready to make the other big money asks or decision-making power asks is an influence ask. Because when you're in the communities that can get to know you and that you can bring value to and that they can offer their mentorship for, you've grown your influence in a market.
We're almost at our time. Kelly, do you have one more question you want to sneak in there?
Well, probably the one thing question. If you could leave us with one thing, what would it be? What's a final thought on how to ask for more over time?
You have to fall in love with your goals more than you fear rejection.
Okay, you've got to say more about that. Fall in love with your goals more than you're overcoming your fear of rejection. So can you give me, what does it even mean?
It means I am so connected to and so in love with and so ready to stand up for my goals for myself that I'm willing to make the asks that beg rejection. I'm willing to put myself out there and extend myself into new communities, to make asks of people that I think are out of my league, to go for that larger piece of PR, to ask that person that seems just so somebody you admire to mentor you, to go ahead and take the risk because you know that those risks are ways in which you're standing up for your dreams for yourself.
What I love that we're ending on this note, because what you're pointing to is the importance of courage. And when we have people in our programs, it's a big ask of them. We are asking that they will demonstrate some mastery in courage, not that it's going to go away. We can't snap our fingers and neutralize it or dilute it, but we really support them in mastering the fact that it is a period of uncertainty. What would be something that you would say that would encourage our listeners or provide our listeners with a bit of a touchstone on how you think about courage?
Purpose drives courage. And so if you get really clear on the purpose of the financial goals that you have for yourself, the business goals that you have for yourself, the wealth acquiring goals you have for yourself, the reversal of debt goals that you have for yourself, if you can reconnect with that, the purpose of that, because it's not likely so you can run out and buy a Lambo. It's probably because you're wanting to put together your financial capacity to put your children through college. It's because you're saving up to buy your very first house where you will, launch your small media company. It's because you are saving up or getting yourself out of debt so that you can take that sabbatical in 5 years and sail around the world and tell everyone, even yourself, that you lived a life of adventure that you promised yourself. So when we can reconnect with the purpose of our goals, it's can be a way to fuel our courage.
Dia, thank you so much for your time today. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Dia Bondi is the author of Ask Like an Auctioneer: How to Ask for More and Get